Hello, hello, and welcome back into the Magic the Gathering Unofficial Audiobooks podcast. We are cruising along with Book 2 of the Artifact Cycle, Planeswalker. Phil Dawson here, your humble narrator, talking at you. And I don't know about you, but I was flipping out a little bit when I heard the name Sarah, which brought to mind cards like Sarah's Avenger, Sarah the Benevolent, and all the angelic imagery that goes along with it. So I'm very pumped to see where this is going. I'm all about Kennedirn, too, the handsomest paragon. Now that's a character we can get behind, am I right? Anyway, I hope you're enjoying the tale, and I must alert you, too, we have hit 4 patrons. Donnie joined up at the $5 tier as a content human. Thank you so much, Donnie, and if you want to join, I highly recommend it. I am still searching for ways to make it even more worthwhile to those that do join up. Again, this is all done and can only be done free of charge to follow all fan content rules and regulations with Wizards of the Coast. So the Patreon support is your way of sort of cheering me on to keep pushing out the chapters and keep focused on the long haul for the great books in the Magic lore. I fully intend to get to the invasion cycle, if not further, but we have a ways to go and lots of journeys to go on. So I hope you not only listen in, but do have a chance to join up and support. I do appreciate it all. And again, your feedback would be great, too. I know I bounced around a little with Susana's name in the last chapter. I also got a great tweet from a listener. He said he can only visualize my Urza as a wizard that's all coked out, which I think if, you're around for 4,000 years, you might lean in that sort of personality, especially if you're all powerful. That's the way I'm doing it. But I love the feedback. Good, bad, indifferent. It's good connecting with you, so feel free to reach out. I'm Phil and Sendai on Twitter and on Instagram, and you can use the hashtag MTGAB if you want to start any convo about the books or the podcast. Again, everyone, thank you so much. Let's get to it. Chapter 16. Zancha watched Kennedirn carry Susana through one of the many open doorways and made sure she'd remember which one before rising to her feet. Speed, she decided, mattered. The palace didn't like her, and especially didn't like her when she moved quickly. Slow, gliding movements as if she were crossing a frozen pond offended at least. She made steady progress from the porch through the door and down a majestic corridor. There was no one to stop or question her, at least no one that Zancha could see, which was not to say that she didn't believe her every step was scrutinized. The corridor ended in a chamber of breathtaking beauty. Unlike the rest of the palace, which seemed to be made from crystal and stone, this inner chamber was a place of life and growth. A maze of columns that might be trees, all graceful but asymmetric and enchanting, hid the walls. Each tree or column was taller than her eye could measure. Zancha lost her thoughts in the overhead tangle of green-gold branches and the music, which was no longer the austere interplay of wind and light, but the more playful sounds of water and the bright-feathered birds she glimpsed among the high branches. She was startled, witless, when someone grabbed her from behind. "Zancha, I did not know you still lived." "Urza." They'd never been much for backslapping embraces or other shows of affection, but any tradition needed its exception. And Urza was more animated, more alive than Zancha could remember him. His hands were warm and supple on her shoulders. They banished the lethargy that had plagued her since she first awakened and ended the numbness in her gut around the cyst. "Let me look at you," he said, straightening his arms. His eyes glittered, but only with the reflections from Sarah's palace. "A bit worn and dirty at the edges," Urza winked as he tightened his fingers, "but still the same Zancha." There was the faintest hint of a question in his statement. The sense that they were being watched hadn't faded with the numbness and lethargy. If anything, Zancha was more aware than ever that she was in a strange, perhaps hostile surrounding. "As stubborn and suspicious as ever," Zancha replied with a wink of her own. "We will talk, child. There is much to talk about. But first, you must meet our host." His arm urged her to walk beside him. "I did, once, already." Zancha slipped free and into one of the many other languages they both knew. If they were back to child, then she was going to be very stubborn and twice as suspicious. Lowering her voice, she added, Sarah sent me away to die, Urza, and sent one of her own to die with me. That's why you didn't know I was alive. We will talk, child, Urza repeated in Sarah's language. This is not a good time to have a tantrum. She switched to another language. I'm not a child, I'm not having a tantrum, and you know it. Urza could put thoughts into Zancha's head with only a little more discomfort than when he removed them. Yes, I know, and I will ask Sarah why she misled me. I'm sure the answer will amuse us both, but for now you are safe with me, and it will be better all around if you behave graciously. Zancha replied with a thought of her own. Graciously be damned! Sarah didn't mislead you, she lied! But Zancha couldn't put a thought into Urza's mind, and her indignation went unshared. Urza walked away, and faced with a choice between keeping up with him or staying by herself, she caught up, as he'd almost certainly know she would. He said the chamber was known as Sarah's aviary, and that she had seldom left it since creating her floating island realm. Then you know this isn't a natural world? Zancha asked, still refusing to speak Sarah's language. Yes, Urza replied, ignoring her choice of language. Does it remind you of my home as much as it reminds me? She was careful not to speak the word Phyrexia. There are no abominations here. The angel's wings are no more a part of them than your sister's a part of you. Sarah's realm is slow and not without its flaws, but it is a living, natural place. For you, I haven't eaten since I've got here. That's not natural for me. She has paid a price for her creation. Now, be gracious. Urza took Zancha's hand as they wound around another organic column. A narrow spiral stairway opened in front of them. Zancha looked up, and up, and up. There's another way? We are guests. Urza began climbing. Zancha fell in behind him and into a kind of a trance. The spiral was a tight one, and each step a bit different in height and width than its neighbors. An odd sort of perfection that made each one unique, Zancha thought, when she dared to think. Each step required concentration lest she lose her balance and tumble to the floor, which, through the tangle of branches around them, had come to look like twinkling stars on a warm, humid night. Urza surged ahead of her, but a hand awaited at the top of the stairway. Not Urza, Kennedirn. She recognized him by his stained robe. She asked me to wait until you were here. Zancha was breathing hard, but Urza's embrace had revitalized her. She didn't need anyone's help to follow the angel along a suspended walkway to a somewhat more intimate chamber than any she'd yet seen in the palace. It was only 10 or 20 times the size that her room needed to be. Urza was there already, talking with a woman who could only be the lady, Sarah herself. Having seen angels, archangels, and Susna, Zancha had expected a tall, slender, and remote woman, but Sarah could have walked through any man-made village without attracting a second glance. Her face, though pleasant, was plain, and she had the sturdy silhouette of a woman who'd borne children and done many a hard day's work. She was also one of 2 light sources in the chamber, surrounded by a gently flickering white nimbus. If she created this realm, as Urza said, then, like him, she could change her appearance to suit her whim. The chamber's other light source was incomprehensible at first glance, a jumble of golden light and angular crystals bound together in 2 overlapping spheres. An artifact, certainly. Zancha's dodger instincts had never deserted her, and beautiful, but its purpose, except as a source of light, eluded her. Please, Kennedirn offered his hand again. She is very weak, and she must be alive when the cocoon is closed, or there'll be no reason to close it. Be gracious, Urza had said, so Zancha let the angel have her hand, and before she could object, he swept her up in both arms and carried her into the crystal lights. The wingless sisters of Sarah were, perhaps, accustomed to being swooped about the palace, but Zancha had rarely felt as helpless or as grateful to have her own feet under her once they reached the tiny enclosure where the spheres met. Cocoon, Kennedirn had called it, and that was as good of a word for any, the vaguely egg-shaped compartment in which Susna lay. Her stained gown was gone, replaced by a shining quilt, but the aegis had seared her face and hair. Her eyes were terrible, frightened, and frightening. Susna was blind. At least, Zancha hoped Susna was blind. Zancha? Susna's voice was a pain-racked whisper. Her breathing was shallow and liquid. Zancha had seen worse, done worse, though few things in her life had been more difficult than reaching out to touch the quilt-bandaged lump that was or had been Susna's hand. I'm here. We made it. You were right. Difficult, but right. Sasna tried to smile. Pain defeated her.
We will name our child for you.
Be gracious. That was easy. I'm honored. Optimism came harder. I'll show her, or him, how to be difficult. Another failed smile on Sasna's swollen lips in an agonizing attempt to shake her head.
You will go outside where you belong. Kenadiern and I will remember you.
With the sound of his name, Kenadiern came closer. His wings were soft, plumes rather than feathers. He rested his hand on Zancha's shoulders. A shiver ran down Zancha's spine, reminding her that, unlike Sarah, the Ineffable had decreed that Phyrexians would not be born, and she was neither a man nor woman. Zancha couldn't know if Kenadiern were a true paragon or if anything useful, but she believed he'd been looking for his beloved, and she envied Sasna as she had never envied anyone before. We must close the cocoon, Kenadiern whispered, urging her to retreat. Better call it a coffin. Some hurts were beyond even Urza's healing talents, and Sasna's would be among them. It wasn't just her skin that had been charred and blistered. Sasna had breathed fire, and her insides were burnt as well. Zancha took a backward step.
Goodbye, friend,
Sasna whispered. Goodbye, friend. The upper sphere had begun to descend. Sasna might be blind, but the cocoon wasn't silent. Surely she knew it was closing around her. She met her end without a whimper. Until you rise again, Kenadiern added, a euphemism if Zancha had ever heard one, though Sasna managed a trembling smile just before the spheres blocked Zancha's view. There was a click, the golden light intensified, and, through her feet, Zancha felt a whir of a distant engine. She thought of the faint of flesh, of the vats where discarded flesh was rendered and newts were decanted. You didn't say goodbye, she said to Kenadiern. Sasna will rise again. The lady does not offer her cocoon to everyone, but when she does, it never fails. He swept Zancha up again before she could protest and brought her down to Urza and Sarah, whose conversation died as they approached. Sasna is a special child to me. Sasna is a special child to me, Sarah said before Zancha's feet were on the floor. I didn't know what had become of her. I'm grateful that you showed us where she was, even though I'm not grateful for your methods. The lady had Urza's voice, the voice of someone who treated everyone as children, someone whom mortals might mistake for a god. Zancha had never been mortal, never believed in gods, and she used up all her graciousness. Sasna didn't believe in mistakes. She never lost faith in you. All the time we were together on that forsaken floating island, she was hoping you or Kenadiern would rescue her before the archangels came to kill her. If that was you who called the Aegis off, then when it comes to rescuing your special children, you cut very close to the edge. Urza was appalled. His eyes glowed dark. Kenadiern stared at his sandaled feet. Things here aren't as perfect as she believed they were. You are Phyrexian, are you not? Sarah asked, a tone short of accusation. Urza's displeasure rumbled through the empty part of Zancha's mind. The important part, the part she'd kept for herself, since Gix had taught her how to build mental walls, remained unbowed. You know I am. Your leave, my lady, Kenadiern interrupted. My love is in your hands now. There's no need for me to stay. Sarah dipped her chin. Kenadiern was in the air before she raised it again. There were only 3 of them left in the branch-framed chamber, a man and a woman with the powers of gods, and a Phyrexian newt. Well, Zancha was used to being overmatched. There's no need for this, Zancha. Urza attempted to impose peace. I think Lady Sarah will concede there have been certain imperfections in our condition here. He turned towards Sarah. Your arrival was so unexpected, Sarah began. Zancha cut her off. That reminds me. How did we get here? The last thing I remember was beating on the shell of a Phyrexian turtle. I destroyed that abomination and all the others, Urza answered quickly. But my enemies were lurking, watching from nether places, and before I could escape, they sent through reinforcements. It threatened to become the 4th sphere battle all over again. So I decided to retreat. I walked away, grabbing you as I left. But you were badly injured, and my grasp was not firm. I sensed the chasm to Phyrexia, of course. It's always there, but I sensed another, too, and I threw myself across it. It was a terrible passage, Zancha. I lost you. I would not have survived myself if Lady Sarah had not found me and put me inside that cocoon you just saw. Such a marvelous artifact. If there is life, any life at all, the cocoon will sustain it and nurture it until it is whole and healed.
I am well again, Zancha, well and whole, and I have not been since I left Phyrexia, since before Phyrexia, since I met you. The principle is ingenious. To make her plain, Sarah has treated time itself as a liquid, as a stream where water flows at different speeds. Zancha swallowed hard. It didn't help. She stopped listening to Urza ramble about the wonders of Sarah's cocoon. His recounting of events was laced through with simplifications that were no better than lies. So I decided to retreat, and I walked away, didn't accurately describe what she remembered of Urza's Phyrexian invasion. It was probably no better at describing how the skirmish with the Turtle Avengers ended, or how they'd come to Sarah's realm. But Urza remembered what he wanted to remember, and forgot the rest. He had rescued her from the turtles, never mind asking if he cared about anything beyond keeping her away from Phyrexian scrutiny. His grasp might not have been firm, he might have lost her by accident, and he had been ill since Phyrexia, but not before. Zancha was relieved to see Urza looking vigorous again, pleased to see him talking and moving in a mortal way, but she could not escape the implications of those few words. Since I met you, they echoed ominously in her own thoughts. Had Urza decided something? Perhaps everything was her fault? That warm greeting in the lower hall had been less relief or enthusiasm than guilt. Zancha glanced at Sarah, wondering what role she had played. Romance? That seemed unlikely with Urza, unnecessary too when she could distract him with the cocoon. After she'd gotten rid of Urza's annoying Phyrexian companion? You want to know what I did when you were found? Sarah asked, an indication that she was sensitive to thoughts and perhaps did not find Zancha's mind as empty as Urza did. I know what you did. Why did you do it? What had I done to you or your perfect realm? All things, natural or artifact, are created around a single essence. Your essence is black mana. When I created my plane, I created it around white mana, because the underlying essence plays a pivotal role in determining the character of a thing. White mana is serene, harmonic. It has the constancy that allows my plane to be the safe haven I desired. Black mana is discord, suspicion, and darkness. There is black mana here. It was not possible to eliminate it entirely, but it is only the small remainder that balances the rest. I told you it's not so simple, Urza interrupted their host. Lady Sarah turned away from all that was real to make this place. She created it out of sheer will, but it seems there is a flaw, a fallacy in willful creation. Outside, in the multiverse, which is unbounded, balance simply is, and all planes are balanced among all the essences. Inside, when a plane is created by an act of a single will, balance is impossible. One essence must dominate and another become the odd fellow. I knew this place reminded me of Phyrexia. Momentarily forgetting everything else, Zancha savored the satisfaction of solving a thorny puzzle. The teacher priest said the ineffable made Phyrexia. I thought they meant that we all answered to him, that we were all part of his plan, but it was more than that. The ineffable created Phyrexia. It was nothing at all before he made it. Precisely, Urza agreed. I had reached the same conclusion, a created plane, cut off from the rest of the multiverse by an unfathomable chasm. No wonder it was so hard to find, but inherently unbalanced. Think of it, Zancha. Lady Sarah retreats to her cocoon where she adds her will to the plane's flux, constantly keeping it almost in balance, but never quite and never for long. It always slips away. She prunes it to keep it small. Small's never been a part of the Ineffable's plan. Excuse me, Sarah said firmly in her own language, which neither Zancha nor Urza had been using. The air in Zancha's lungs became so heavy she couldn't speak, and even Urza seemed to be at a loss for words. As I was saying, the lady's tone implied she'd tolerate no more interruptions. The only black mana here is here because it cannot be eliminated. Nothing here has black mana as its underlying essence. Such a thing, natural or artifact, would disrupt everything around it. When the archangels found you and Urza both near death and unable to speak for yourselves, I determined that you had swallowed a piece of him. You were clinging to him, and your essence was black, is black. They have standing orders. Safe haven cannot be extended to anything with an underlying black mana essence. Because you had a piece of him, and we did not know then if it was a vital piece, I sent you away, put you in quarantine, while my cocoon restored Urza. His underlying essence is white mana, the same as ours. There was no risk. The cocoon purged him of a black mana curse. The ineffable, Zancha thought.
The Ineffable had placed a spark in Urza's skull as surely as Gix had placed one in hers all those centuries ago. She said nothing, though, because Sarah would object and because she wanted to hear Urza's version of events before proposing her own. If black mana was suspicion, then Zancha had become black mana incarnate. It was not a vital piece, of course, Sarah continued. Urza explained how he'd enabled you to survive the journeys between planes when he emerged from the cocoon. But by then what? Zancha asked silently, eager to hear how Sarah would wriggle free of the truth. The lady hesitated, and Urza plunged into the silence. By then, her plane needed tending. She needed tending. Your presence alone had been enough to disrupt the balance more than had ever been disrupted. You were well and truly lost by then, and I had no idea that you'd survived at all. My grasp had been weak to begin with. I asked the elders here, and they said I'd been alone when archangels brought me to the palace. They lied! Zancha snapped, unable to stifle her indignation. She wished Kenadiern had not taken his leave. She'd like to have seen his face when she heard that remark. Misinformed, Urza perversiated. I was alone. The archangels separated us, took us in different directions. The sisterhood had no idea what I was talking about. They knew, Urza. They sent Sasna to die with me. At least that's what Sasna had assumed. But there were other possibilities. Sarah said she had decided what would be done with her and Urza both. Zancha looked straight at Sarah. Someone sent Sasna to die with me. I cannot keep up with you, the lady complained. Either of you. You should hear yourselves switching languages, every other phrase, every other word. You've been together too long. No one could possibly understand you. She took Urza's hand. My friend, my offer stands. I will take her wherever you think best, but this is something for you to work out between yourselves. That piece of you she holds within her, surely it is a vital part of your memory, Urza. You should consider carefully before abandoning it. Sarah faded, walking somewhere else within her realm, leaving Urza and Zancha alone in the golden light from the cocoon. What offer, Urza? Abandon it? Abandon me? But Urza was staring at the place where Sarah had stood. She was angry. I had no notion at all. You should not have done that, Zancha. It was very ungracious to speak your mind in a way that Lady Sarah couldn't understand. She doesn't understand that the Phyrexians empty your mind. I must find her and apologize. He started to fade as well. Urza! Zancha called him back. Waste not, want not. You don't hear the words or their meanings. She said both of us. We were both speaking whatever words fit best. We do that. We've done it from the beginning. We've been too many places and seen too many things that no one else has seen. We have our own way of talking. We might just as well be one mind with two bodies. No, that can't be, he insisted. Lady Sarah is a planeswalker. You aren't. She saw great tragedy, as did I, on Dominaria, and she made this place, this plane, as a memorial to what she'd lost. She understands me, Zancha. No one else has understood me. I've been happy here with her. Who wouldn't be happy in a world of their own making? The Ineffable is happy. The Ineffable understood you. Urza whirled around. Don't try to tempt me. That trap is sprung, Zancha. What trap? She retorted, but beneath the surface her fears and suspicions had intensified. What offer, Urza? What happened to you while I was floating on that island? What changed your mind about me? Lady Sarah healed me. Her cocoon healed me of all the taint and curse that Phyrexia had laid on me since Mishra and I led him back into Dominaria. He reached for her. Zancha eluded him. It's not your fault, Zancha. No one is blaming you, least of all me. The one you call the Ineffable used you. He could not tempt me directly, so he made you tempt me, to lead me to him. Oh, I knew you were dangerous. I've known that since I rescued you. I knew you could never be completely trusted, but I thought I was strong enough, clever enough to use you myself. Your Ineffable has lost his power over me, Zancha. You were merely his tool, his arrow aimed at my heart. All these centuries that you've been beside me, I've been obsessed with simple vengeance. I didn't see the larger patterns until you were gone. It is all Lady Sarah can do to keep her plane balanced. She knows someday she will grow tired and it will fail. She does not let it expand. Created planes fail. They cannot evolve. They dare not grow. They're doomed from the moment of their creation. I understand that now. Only natural planes endure. Yogg don't. Your Ineffable was exiled from some other plane before Dominaria.
He thinks of Phyrexia not as a safe haven, as Sarah thinks of her realm, but as a place to build a conquering army. Twice he has tried to conquer Dominaria, and he will try again. I know it. And I have wasted all my time looking for Phyrexia, trying to conquer Phyrexia. I told you it couldn't be done. Yes, you did. Your creator knew I would not believe you. He is mad, but he is also cunning and clever. That is why he emptied your mind. That is how he tempted me off the path. And if the ineffable was mad, but cunning, what did that leave Urza? There was truth and logic wound through Urza's argument. Phyrexia was the ineffable's creation, as this world of floating islands was Sarah's creation, and Phyrexia was the rallying point for a conquering army. If all had gone according to plan, Zantia would have been part of that army, at least as the demon Gix had conceived the army while the ineffable slept. Sarah slept in the cocoon to keep her world alive. Had the ineffable slept for the same reason? Was that why the priests warned the newts, never speak the ineffable's name lest he be awakened? You awoke him, Zantia said incredulously, interrupting Urza's diatribe which had gone on while she asked herself questions. When you rode your dragon into Phyrexia, you must have awakened the ineffable. No, Zantia, you will not lead me astray again. I know what must be done. Yawgmoth is a planeswalker, like Sarah and me. Only planeswalkers can create planes, and planeswalkers are born in natural worlds. No one born here can walk. No Phyrexian can walk. So Yawgmoth was born on a natural plane and driven out. I will find that plane where Yawgmoth was born, and when I do, I will know his secrets and his weaknesses. I will find the records of those who cast him out, and I will learn how they won their victory. I will find the tools that I need to build the artifacts that will keep Yawgmoth away from Dominaria and away from any other natural plane he might covet. That's reasonable, Zantia conceded, if we knew when the ineffable created Phyrexia. No, I have said too much to you already. You have no thoughts of your own, Zantia. Whatever you think, whatever you say comes from Yawgmoth. It is not your fault, but I dare not listen to you. We must go our separate ways, you and I. Lady Sarah discussed this before you arrived. She is willing to take you to a natural plane she knows. That's the offer she mentioned. I have not seen it, but she says it is a green plane with much water and many different races. I think it must be like Dominaria of my youth. You will do well there, Zantia. Zantia was a breath short of speechless. You can't mean that. You can't. Look at me, Urza. I am what I am, what I've always been. What would a newt like me do forever on a single world? Never mind that it had been her destiny to sleep on such a world. Urza reached for her and this time caught her. You've always done very well for yourself. You trade, you travel, you learn all their languages, you scratch a little garden in the dirt. When I rescue you, I never imagined we'd be together as long as we've been. I never imagined anything else. Zantia, you don't imagine anything that Yawgmoth didn't put inside your skull. I will win your vengeance, trust me. You cannot climb into the lady's cocoon. Black mana is your underlying essence. The cocoon would destroy you, or you would destroy it. I'm sorry, but it has to be this way. You can't just abandon me. Not to Sarah. Who will you talk to? Who else understands, truly understands? I will miss you, Zantia, more than you can imagine. You've been my ward against loneliness and, yes, even madness. You have a good heart, Zantia. Even Lady Sarah admits that. She finds no fault with your heart. Heart. Zantia wriggled out of his embrace. Give me your knife. She had nothing but her ragged, dirty robe and a pair of sandals. Urza had a leather sheath slung from his belt. If it wasn't real, he could make it real with a thought. Please, Urza, let me have your knife, any knife. Zantia, don't be foolish. You were always happiest when we settled in one place. I'm not going to be foolish. I just want to borrow your knife. I'll find something else that's sharp. She eyed the cocoon's golden crystals, and Urza relented. The knife he handed her had a blade no longer than her longest finger, which would have been plenty long enough to slash her throat if she'd been determined to bleed to death. But Zantia had never in her life wanted to die. She wasn't fond of pain either, when there were other alternatives, which at that moment there weren't. Zantia put a few paces between them. Then, with a steady hand, she plunged the short knife into her flank where she tucked her heart away. Her hand was shaking as she lengthened the incision. Urza tried to stop her. Panic gave her the strength to reach inside. My heart, she said, offering him the blood-stained amber. If you think I'm untrustworthy, if you think I belong to the ineffable, crush it and I'll die. I swore I'd never betray you. I'd rather die than live knowing that you've abandoned me. Zantia! Urza reached for the wound, which he could heal with a touch. She staggered backward. Take it!
If I am what you say I am, I don't want to live. But if you won't kill me, then take me with you.